The year was 2001, the end of the Sega Dreamcast, one of the greatest video game consoles ever. And then, that same year, the Nintendo GameCube was released. I thought of this really amazing idea. Wouldn't it have been interesting if Sega and Nintendo teamed up together to make a game console before the GameCube was released? How amazing would that have been? Where it was like, Sega comes to Nintendo and they're like, hey, listen, we're failing with the Dreamcast. I know we have a rocky history with one another, but the Xbox and the PS2 are coming out, and we've both been companies that have been known for our lighthearted characters and worlds that appeal to children and adults alike, and our games have childlike wonder to them that are different from Xbox and the PS2 for the most part. And we have lots of amazing console ideas and concepts. I think it'd be better if we teamed up. And just think about this, guys. Mario and Sonic on the same console together, but it's a Sega Nintendo console. And if this happened in 2001, before the GameCube was launched, then it could have been Sega and Nintendo versus Xbox and the PS2. And Sega could have said to Nintendo, listen guys, we know you had a rocky stuff going on during the N64 era. It was a great console, but the PS1 has always been our enemy. Like Sega could say this to Nintendo, that before the PlayStation launched, it was all about us. We controlled the game. It was Nintendo versus Sega. We were the ones that controlled the hemisphere of the video game industry. And we were able to work it out between the two of us. Back in the day, the Genesis was selling like hotcakes, and so was the Super Nintendo. And that was our domain. Yes, we threw mud at each other, but we were able to control it without any craziness or controversy or fear of losing money, because we both made amazing game consoles. Then Sony comes in with the PlayStation, made us nervous as companies, but now we have the opportunity to make the GameCube better, because we know you guys are coming out with a system called the Dolphin, correct? But now we have an opportunity to make your system better. Think about it, like the GameCube controllers, they could have had a VMU attachment. And also, what really happened was the first time Sonic and Mario appeared in a game together was in Super Smash Bros. Brawl in the late 2000s. We could have had Mario and Sonic games on the GameCube where they were adventure games and Mario and Sonic teamed up together, like rivals teaming up with one another, and it could have been Sonic versus Bowser and Mario versus Eggman, and it could have had storylines and all this amazing stuff, and these would have been the new Mario and Sonic games that everyone wanted to play. And it would have been way better than all that Olympic shit they did. So this would have been way better. And yeah, like Sonic found his home on the GameCube after the Dreamcast died, and that was amazing. The Sonic GameCube era was phenomenal. But imagine how much more better it would have been if, like, Sega didn't have to die as a console manufacturer. They could have teamed up with Nintendo and still lived. And even if Nintendo was stingy with money with Sega, and they've been known to do this quite a bit, even if Nintendo said to Sega, listen, we are interested in this idea, we could try it, but it's got to be like 60-40 or 70-40 or something like that. Nintendo says that to Sega. If I was the president of Sega, I'd say yes, because at least we'd still be in the console business. It'd still be a Sega game system, but Sega and Nintendo. And you know, Sega could have been like, hey listen, you guys won. You beat us. Fair and square. But we still want to make consoles. We still want to be in the hardware industry. We want to team up with you guys. We want to live on. We want Sonic to live on. Let's pair Mario and Sonic together. The two greatest video game icons of all time. The kind of money they could have made making all these amazing fantasy Mario and Sonic games on the GameCube, people would have loved that. And especially in the early 2000s, Newgrounds videos had Mario and Sonic paired fighting each other all the time. So those are like the fantasies we were able to watch and live out through Newgrounds in the early 2000s. But imagine if we didn't even need to do that. Imagine if we got to have that with the games. Imagine if those could have been real at that time. That would have been just phenomenal. And plus, I have this extra idea. What if it could have been Nintendo and Sega doing all these other interesting ideas together as a company, trying to convince one or two third-party companies to become a second-party publisher, like Capcom? What if Sega convinced Capcom to become a second-party publisher to only make games on Nintendo? Because during the Dreamcast era, that was Capcom's console, man. Capcom made the best games on the Sega Dreamcast. They were phenomenal. So just imagine they make this deal, like they go to Capcom, hey listen guys, Sega and Nintendo, we're teaming up. We're making a game system. We want you guys to come along for the ride. And imagine how much more powerful and how much more popular the DreamCube, the Nintendo DreamCube, when you don't just have Mario and Sonic games on there together, now you got only Capcom games on there. And there'd be no Capcom releases at all on the PS2 or the Xbox. That would have been a pretty big blow to Microsoft and Sony. Now, that would have been amazing because Sega could have said to Capcom, you guys, we love you guys. We love you guys. You guys made so many amazing games for our Dreamcast. We appreciate all the love and support, and now we want to give it back to you guys by making you guys a second-party publisher to our new joint company, Sega Nintendo. Well, now, Sega has all these other game properties. Virtua Fighter, the Shinobi games, Sama de Amigo, new ideas, Knights. All these franchises that Sega owns, now they could only be on the Nintendo DreamCube. Imagine that. So not only does Nintendo get Sonic, they also get all the other Sega properties that could only be on the DreamCube. And the regular console for color could have still been purple, but then you had an option to buy like the white and orange one so that it looked like the Dreamcast looked. So depending on whether you're a Sega boy or a Nintendo boy, you can pick either one you want. Like, depending on your loyalty as a gamer, you could have been like, oh, well, I miss Sega, so I want to get the Dreamcast-looking GameCube. Oh, I don't give a shit about Sega, so I'm going to stick with the purple regular GameCube. But at the same time, no matter what console you get, it's going to be Mario and Sonic games on this console. Man, just imagine the history, how history could have been so different. Because Sega was always brilliant as a game company with their ideas. Not the executions, but the ideas. So all this takes was this idea. Go to Nintendo, make this shit happen. And this way Sega could have still been making consoles. Maybe people would look back on the Dreamcast and not view it as a failure if this happened. People would look back on the Dreamcast and people would say, oh, well, it had 1 or 2 years, but Sega decided they wanted to do something better. Like, the fall of Sega wouldn't have been, like, so sad and miserable for all the Sega fans. And this way Nintendo fans would have won, too, because now you get Sonic on the GameCube. So you get everything together. And this way, for the most part, the Xbox and the PS2 were all about the mature games, like the shooters and the very serious games. And Nintendo and Sega, they had a reputation for making childlike games. So during this generation of console battle, of console wars, it could have been like all the awesome gamers that loved the cartoony games, and then you could have had all the serious players that liked the gun games and stuff, and they're the ones that bought the PS2 and the Xbox. So it could have been like kind of a culture war of gaming, of your viewpoint of what you think is cool. Like, what team are you on? Do you like the mature shit, or do you like the childlike shit? And how awesome this would have been. And then it would have made things difficult somewhat for Xbox and the PS2. And then it would have made them change their opinions. And the Xbox and the PS2, they would have more platformers. They would make more stuff with Blinks the Cat or whatever, just stuff like that. Man, just imagine that. How amazing this could have been. If my idea worked, Capcom became a second-party publisher, then you could have had the new Smash Brothers, where you got Street Fighter characters, the Mario characters, and the Sonic characters all in the same game, in like a fighting adventure game. And Mega Man would have been teamed up with Sonic, and all these ideas, and Mario could have teamed up with the Street Fighter characters, and like Capcom could have became the new Rareware for Nintendo and Sega, because during this time they lost Rareware to Xbox. So Nintendo could have been like, well, you took Rareware? Guess what? We took Capcom. How you like that? And now the new era of the great second-party publisher, Capcom, could have been happening during the early 2000s, where history could have repeated itself. Now our second-party publisher is Capcom. Now we receive a new renaissance where it's no longer Nintendo and Rareware. Now it's Nintendo and Capcom and Sega. Oh, God, just imagine, guys. The possibilities of what could have happened during that time are just so amazing. Jeez. Maybe in a different reality, like this happened. I wish this fucking happened, because I loved the GameCube. The GameCube I thought was better than the Xbox and the PS2, but how much better would the GameCube would have been if all this stuff happened? Just something to think about, or something to dream about. So, let me know what you guys think of my crazy idea. Thank you for watching.